Right. What's up, y'all? Hope everybody is well. That's right. Welcome to the Onyx Report. I don't know what it is. On a beautiful October 20th. Hope everybody is having a good one. Just trying to check my sounds, make sure everything is coming through nice and crisp. All right. We're trying to get it done in a little bit more of a timely fashion. We're going to see how well we do with that. But yeah, greetings. Welcome to the Onyx Report, where we as Black male justice advocates uplift Black men and boys using critical analysis. Hopefully going to have a good one today. I'd like to get some feedback from people in the crew, most particularly the comments. We are broadcasting on multiple channels today. We're broadcasting on innerlightradio.com. We're broadcasting on YouTube and, of course, on Facebook. So before we jump in, as usual, I would like to thank my supporters. So let me go ahead and jump in and do that. Here we go. Cool. So shout out to my supporters. Definitely much appreciation on my part for your support of the show. And for those of you that have not done so, please make sure you do the same. Support the show. Right there on the screen, you can see the Patreon links, the Cash App link, the PayPal link, the Venmo. You can also become a member of the channel. Go ahead and click the join button right next to the subscribe button, and I hope you've subscribed. Please make sure you like, share, subscribe, join, and donate to support the show. You can also become a member on YouTube and check out the different membership levels. You also can go to Patreon, and you can see the Patreon link right below my video image. You can go there and become a member there and support the channel. You can also support the Institute for Black Male Studies at that link as well. So just wanted to get some of that business out the way, and some gratitude. It's been an interesting week. Let me see. Let me shout out some of the people I'm seeing in the comment section. Busier and I guess it is. Hope you're well. Nicholas, what's happening? Mr. Z, Uneducated Lane, what's going on? Joe's, Brian, what's happening? Let's see, Chris Blue, very little. What's going on? Neo, I Believe, Tim Howard, what's up? I'm listening. What's happening? Ron, Javon, JJ Mars, Brother Muwata, what's happening? All right, so you have a number of people in here. Malika, it's always good to see you, man. Aquateki, what's happening? Brotherly Love, what's going on? Brother D, Tim Howard, yeah, what's happening? Peace to the crew. Hope everybody is well, right? On this beautiful day. Let's see, we got a number of things to jump into, but first let me say, I don't know, for some reason I haven't slept too much. I think part of the reason, I don't know why this bothered me, but I was up watching, I watched Hoarders for the first time, and I have no idea why. What's up, Golden Child? What's up, Hybrid? 3,000. Appreciate that support. 3,000. Yeah, man. I was up. I watched. Hoarders. That mess freaked me out. Absolutely freaked me out. and I could not sleep. Don't ask me why. I mean, it was so filthy. I could not sleep. I was actually up bleaching the bathroom counters at 3. I have no idea why it affected me so much, but it was disgusting. And I mentioned it on Facebook. And of course, my supporters' response to that was to send me a bunch of links to other episodes, which further freaked me out. So, so I made my son sit and watch it, and we both sat there and freaked out. So, I don't know. It's been a weird week. I'll leave it at that. But I'm glad to be here, all in all. Hybrid says, my mom is a hoarder. It's rooted in a mental illness. Absolutely, it is. And I'm convinced after watching those episodes, man. And I realize in hindsight that I've met a few hoarders, but there's a difference between being a hoarder and being somebody who, hold on one second, somebody who is, has feces all over the house. Those are two very different things, two very different levels. All right. Yeah. Anyway, what's up, Queen Kalila? Good to see you. Hope all is well with you. But yeah, I've known a few hoarders, and it's only in hindsight that I recognize that they were. But there's a difference between having clutter and then having a whole nother level where your home is like a biohazard, and that's, so that was definitely a trip to watch. Anyway, let's get into some of the preliminary stuff I definitely wanted to say before we jump into today's topic. Y'all know we celebrate Black men over here. So we do so by starting with our Sacred Black Masculine series. And this is basically an acknowledgement of Black men who have done something that I think is definitely worthy of acknowledgement, whether it's celebrated publicly or not. Right? So today, I have not watched a whole lot of versus battles. I definitely watched one that happened just a few days ago. If you're not familiar, this was the versus that took place between Big Daddy Kane and KRS-One. Phenomenal versus. I just got to say, loved it. I am, hey, I'm a golden era, hip hop lover. It is what it is. You know what I mean? If you come around my house at any point in time and you hear music blasting, there's a good chance you're going to hear me blasting something from, somewhere anywhere from 87 to 95. This is what it is, as I said. So I love that classic era. And it was good to see these brothers, up there. It was definitely some moments where you say, yeah, hip hop has definitely gotten older. Seeing Kane trying to keep up with some of the old dance steps. It was Chris came out with that belly, it is what it is, plus a year and a half of sitting at home. A lot of these brothers couldn't perform. So I know, they were trying to get back out there and make some money, but it was a beautiful show. But here's the thing, more than it being just a show, more than it being just a battle for, who was the best, because in regard to that, I think most people have been waiting to see Kane and Kane and Rakim go at it. And I think Ra was more interested in, I won't say more interested, but he was definitely saying that if he was going to do it, it needed to be some serious paper involved. And I don't think anybody ever came up with the money for that. But what I liked about this was, and the reason I'm framing it in terms of the Sacred Masculine, is these brothers took a competitive framework like versus and turned it into a celebration of hip hop. Straight up. They took it. I mean, the emphasis began with one against the other, but by the end of it, you were jumping up and down celebrating hip hop. Some of the people that came out, I mean, the people that brought out to, at various points, DJs, dancers, other, MCs, people out of the audience. It was all, like Joel's saying in the comment section, it was all good vibes. You know what I mean? And that's really what I want to see in a versus, man. I want to see a celebration. I don't always want to see two people going at it. It is what it is. I mean, everybody wants something different. I think in many ways, Kane is incredibly lyrical, as we all know. He's a hurricane unto himself. Chris has an amazing catalog, and I've had the honor of having him here at Fresno State and seeing him perform live. And actually, he taught a couple of classes while we were here as well. few people, tried to jack me for my video. And if you look up KRS-One at Fresno State, you'll see it on other people's channel, but it's actually my video of the event that I threw at my campus. Nevertheless, it is what it is. But no, the celebration of hip hop is what I really appreciated. And for me, this was almost a master class on what a versus can be, beyond just the competitive one-on-one element, which was there, but even that was kind of different, because they didn't compete just as two, MCs. They also competed as two old friends that are brothers. So there's some shit talking. there was some back and forth, little antagonism, but then there was love, there was respect. Kane told the story of when Chris and Miss Melody actually came to his house and helped him move. You know what I mean? It don't get more personal than that. It is what it is. So you had these two guys who've known each other since the late 80s, having a respect for one another while at the same time competing, but then turning the whole thing into a celebration of hip hop. So you had the B-boys come out and they start dancing, and they're doing their thing. And the next thing you know, you're seeing some names. And the only reason I don't really want to drop the names of the surprise guests they had come out is because for those of you that haven't seen it, I really want you to be surprised, because I know I was. Some of the people that came out, I was completely shocked by. Okay. All right, my computer likes to act up. Anyway, so I was completely shocked by it. And although I'm usually the one to spoil things, I'm not going to spoil this. If you haven't watched the verses, go back and check it out. And if you're a classic hip hop lover, you will have some surprises in there that I think you guys will dig. You know what I mean? Straight up. So check that out. Some of the songs in there definitely bring back memories. And for those who weren't alive at that time, you might find some songs that you might want to go back and listen to just to, feel it out, because you might hear something that you've never heard. So it was a beautiful celebration. And for those of you that are hip hop lovers, check it out. So shout out to these, towering MCs, classic artists who reminded us what true hip hop is. You know what I'm saying? The battle is definitely part of the dynamic, but it wasn't limited to just the competition. It also brought in so many of the other elements of hip hop that you definitely had to nod your head and at times laugh out loud if you weren't rhyming along with both of them at different points in time. You know what I mean? So straight up celebration. 136 watching. Again, like, share, subscribe, join, and donate. Support the channel if you would, so we can continue to do what we do. All right. So moving forward, a little bit of a public service announcement. Right. This was a bit random as well. Now I'm going to ask those in my comment section from my sci-fi heads, especially those of you that have not been on my Facebook page recently. Can y'all tell me whose house this is? And put that out there to my comment section. See how many sci-fi heads we have in here. It should be a fairly easy one. For those that are watching, whose house is this? Nah, Valeria, it definitely ain't mine. It's not mine. But Malika's warming up. Right? Anybody else know? No, not the Goonies. Who else in sci-fi lore can we think of whose house that was? Shout out to Max Soul and Mogul Maze. Both of y'all pulled it out. Definitely. Joel did the same. War Child Games. Poltergeist. Absolutely. This was the house from Poltergeist. P. West said Coneheads. Nah, I didn't go that far into the crates, but good one. Yeah, this was the house from Poltergeist. And this was the house from E.T. And I was watching Poltergeist the other night and had a bit of a revelation that I just wanted to share. It's a little bit of a public service announcement, right? I bought a house here in Fresno a couple years ago, and I've been fairly lackadaisical about it. I've been almost indifferent, and I didn't know why. So as I was watching this, now mind you, Poltergeist and E.T. both came out in 1982. So when I was watching Poltergeist the other day, I realized something. Part of the reason I've been indifferent about my own purchase and things of that nature was because growing up, I was about 8 years old when this came out. And I remember seeing a lot of different movies coming out with this kind of white suburban life, kind of being portrayed as normal, as a somewhat of a regular thing, a standard almost for how you should be living. And this is a legacy in media we still see. I go through this with my students all the time. When we watch shows, we watch movies, we study them, we break them down. One of the things we always talk about is the way in which these media presentations portray where these characters live as some kind of norm. And they're usually, appreciate that, thank you for the support, Jarvis. They're usually living in places that most Americans can't afford. But you really don't get that sense if this is all you see. And for a good portion of time, this is one of the things we saw. And it's similar to, watching the Cosby Show growing up as a kid. If you're not, from the East Coast, let alone New York, and you've never seen a brownstone, you really don't have a sense of just how expensive that is. You know what I mean? Just like these houses here. And these were the houses, again, that I grew up watching. Now, I grew up in the Bay. So I'm born in Brooklyn, raised in the Bay. And in the Bay, I actually had white friends, and they were exclusively white, because I went to a public school. But, the white kids that were there, sometimes we'd go over each other's houses and things. I had white friends that lived in houses like these. Now, we didn't, my family didn't, but I always saw them. So I saw them on TV, and then I would only see, some certain white friends, not all of them, but certain white friends living in spots like this. And what I'm getting at here is I realized at some point that this became like a standard in my head for what it meant when I'm doing well, when I'm arrived. And this would be something that I strive for. I never actually asked if I needed this much house, whether or not it suited my long-term goals, whether it suited my monetary goals. I never asked any of those questions. I just, kind of mindlessly drove to this because I had developed this as some type of norm. And so one of the things that I came to was, having reflected on this, I can tell you right now, at this point, I don't even want. What's up, Barry? Appreciate that support. I don't even want stairs like this. You know what I mean? In my current condition, walking around upstairs is not something I really want to do for the next 30 years. So, upon reflecting on it, one of the things I just wanted to put out as a public service announcement is, to, for the most part, appreciate what you have. Right? Before you make mindless purchases based off of irrational, childish ideas you may have been dragging along for the last, X number of years, like I was, actually stop and ask yourself what your goals are, why you have them, where they come from. Are they worthy of your energy? Really assess if your goals, the goals you had at 8, 5, 9 years old, 10 years old, whatever, do they fit the lifestyle you actually want? You know what I mean? As opposed to just blindly pushing towards something that you don't know why. Aside from the fact that, only a fraction of Americans can afford these spots, you can find yourself getting into one, and you may realize it doesn't really suit the lifestyle you want. You know what I mean? And so when I was watching this, I realized this is not even something I want, but it was a standard that I held on to for a long time based on movies I watched as a kid. And so at the end of the day, just be real. Be real about what works for you, what you really want in life, what you don't. And, I'm not saying lie to yourself. If this is your goal, make it your goal. Do what you got to do to get it. But I just realized I had a goal that had nothing to do with what I really wanted. It just had something to do with something I saw as a kid. And sometimes we can do that. We can drag along ideas that we hold on to unconsciously, and they carry weight in our modern life, and we don't really assess that weight. You know what I mean? So I just wanted to kind of share that with you real quick, because I realized some people can really be killing themselves to make dreams happen that they haven't really reflected on. And it ain't always useful. It's not always necessary. You know what I'm saying? So be mindful of that. Shout out to BGS. I see you in the comment section, man. Hope you're well. Thanks for sharing the show as usual. Appreciate that support. So yeah, man, I just wanted to kind of put that on the table because I realized that this is one of those things that, you know, you can drag on for years and never even know why. And I never learned to really go back and really kind of mind where I get some of these goals from. Just kind of do it. Let's see. Yeah. All right. So yeah. Anyway, so let's get on with it. So we're talking about virginity, right? We're talking about virginity. We're talking about black men and what exactly black men are dealing with sexually. Hold on. My computer's doing the most right now. It keeps starting up. I had one of those updates, Microsoft updates, and it just jammed everything up. Hold on. Oh man. I'm trying to make sure it doesn't freeze up anything else. What the hell? Excuse me. Technical issues. Just go ahead and unplug it, and I will get back to that later. Yeah, man. This is media on the go. This is when you don't have a production crew. You are doing it yourself. Y'all know what it is if you're content creators. Oh, man. All right, hold on. This is all kinds of frustrating. All right. This is what it is, man. Stuff just frees up on you. You got to work with it. So, my apologies. All right. So, getting to the real of it, right? We know a few things that right off the bat, right? We raised this question about black men and virginity, right? Let's get the obvious out of the way. This is a piece that I've talked about several times. I've tried to share. If you haven't read it, you get your hands on it. I think if you go to Tommy Curry's academia.com page, I think it is, you can find this. You can Google it, of course. It's called She Touched Me, 5 snapshots of adult sexual violations of boys, black boys. This is a piece he wrote with Ebony Utley. Beautifully done. So definitely check this out. And one of the things that it reveals is that black boys have the youngest sexual debut. So we're going to get the obvious out of the way. In terms of the actual act of intercourse, that's not really a question, right? As it says right there on the screen, our findings indicate that black males are uniquely at risk for sexual impropriety and statutory rape, primarily via older women and teenage female perpetrators. Although risk also includes same-sex violations, this study, the first of its kind, argues that black boys must be understood as a population at risk to be victims of sexual violations and require an earlier sex education emphasizing their sexual vulnerability. Now, this is important. The reason that this is important is because it's so common for black men to talk about losing their virginity before the age of 18, often with girls and women much older, that we don't really even think about it. Not even something we really reflect upon, right? Oh boy. Let's see. I had see if I can find it here. Okay. Hold on. Bear with me. I thought I had it up, but I did not. And I want to make sure I put it up because, okay, I thought I had already posted this up. All right. Let me do it this way. See, over here, thought I was ready. I wasn't. My apologies. Um, let's see. I'm probably not going to put this on the screen. I don't want his name up here. I didn't get permission from him. So, although I will read what he said, I won't put his name out there. Anyway, evidence of what I'm talking about in terms of referring to Dr. Curry and Dr. Utley is a post that a brother made on a Facebook page, the Kevin Samuels group. And one of the things he talked about when the question was raised about sexual debut, he actually wrote his experience. Now, mind you, I have had in the last number of years scores of Black men write to me about the same thing. And I can tell you, I've had similar experiences. I think my sexual experiences started at 3, then again at like 9, then again at 14. So, and I think that's pretty common for most Black men in terms of their first sexual experiences, most particularly even with intercourse, right? But he writes, I was 14 and she was 44. Taught me everything. She told me girls enjoy sex 10 times more than boys. She also said older women would gladly accommodate me if they could be assured I would not kiss and tell. By the time I was in high school, I racked up double-digit scorecards, 2 teachers, 3 girlfriends' moms, and yes, she was right. Girls do want it more than boys. Wexner is a billionaire because he made Victoria's Secret a household name. Why? Because women want to entice hubby into effing. Men don't come close to the desires of women or girls, truth be told. Notice these bees tell on stepdaddy years after he's been having sex with them for more than 3 years. They weren't complaining while the sex was actually happening. So this is just this is, as far as I know, regular person. This is not somebody who is, on a show talking about this. This is just somebody in a comment section on Facebook. And I found it interesting, right? And when somebody tries to ask him about, well, actually somebody apologized and said, I'm sorry you were taken advantage of at 44 by a 44-year-old woman. He points out that he came on to her, right? Which is interesting in and of itself, because if you think about the reversal of that, right? 44-year-old man saying that he had sex with an underage 14-year-old girl because she came on to him. How many people take that seriously? But anyway, that aside, the fact that he's having sex with adult women at 14 is fairly common among Black men, right? It's a fairly common dynamic. Far more than it should be, but very much the case. And if I were to peruse the comment section and ask the men that listen to my show how old they were when they lost their virginity, I think it might be interesting. As a matter of fact, let's go ahead and do that. I'm just, for those who feel willing to share, just put the age you were in the comment section when you had your first sexual experience. Doesn't have to necessarily be full-on intercourse, but your first sexual experience. Just put the age you were. For any who feel comfortable sharing. If you don't, no pressure. 14, 19, 13, 6, 15, 18, 14, 11, 12, 7. Right? This is a clear affirmation of Dr. Curry's main argument when it comes to this. Black boys are sexually vulnerable at a much younger age than other groups. We are highly sexualized much earlier on. And we're even taught that our goal, or at least I should say how we're perceived, is part of that, right? Yeah, and brothers are still writing in. Yep, 6, 9, 9. I was 9, she was 16, 6, 5, 15, 10, 15, 21, 13, 10, 13 to 15, 8, 9, 7, 7. One brother wrote 38. All right. 7, 33, right? One says 33, another says 33. Beautiful, right? But I just want to foreground this a little bit. This is the legacy of how Black men are perceived in this particular country, most especially the legacy of the Mandingo. right? Highly sexualized and potentially sexually violent. This is the perception of Black men. And yet, Black men find themselves desired because of the very narratives that are used to criminalize them, right? Very narratives used to criminalize them. This is a criminalizing stereotype. And yet, at the same time, you will find white and Black women, and other groups for that matter, who find Black men sexually stimulating because of these very ideas, right? In many ways, we are considered walking mandingos, pimps, predators. If anything, I call us, weaponized phallices in terms of how we're perceived. But this is the reality, right? This is the reality of how we're seen. The reason, I think, there we go. Take this down real quick. Let me see. Somebody said something I didn't want to miss, but I think where did it go? Somebody said she was 16. My first time was 14. He said it burnt me. Yep, definitely. 16, 8, and she was 16 years old. Yeah. Now I'm reading these out as well because, I'm also, we're also broadcasting on Interlight Radio, so I want them to be able to keep up with what we're talking about. But part of the sexualized narratives on Black men play out in how we're perceived, and that contributes to our perceived hypersexuality. But it is not always a matter of young men seeking it out. It very much can be a matter of people identifying you as a sexual object. I remember getting into a debate some years ago with a Black feminist, and she laughed and said, are you honestly going to tell me that Black men know anything about being a sexual object? And I was just astonished, because here you have people that actually have degrees in Africana Studies. They know that Black men have been traditionally lynched just for the mere accusation of violating white women, even when they didn't, which was true a good portion of the time. And yet that doesn't translate to sexual objectification to people. It translates as a norm. As a matter of fact, her response to me was, that's not violation. That's just that Black male shit. That was her words, right? And this was somebody who actually teaches in my field, right? So what we're saying is, we're familiar with the stories of lynching. We're familiar with the stories of rape of Black male bodies, even during slavery. And yet Black folk themselves who actually teach Black history will not always make the leap between the sexual violation at that of Black males, and being sexually objectified, sexually demonized, so on and so forth. We won't make that connection. And this is a legacy that Black men still deal with in many ways and in many shapes and forms. What's up, Dr. Thunder? Good to see you in here. Appreciate you supporting the show. Salute. So I bring all of this up for a reason, right? Bring it up for a reason. I was having a conversation with a brother of mine. We've been friends now for 25 odd years. It was just a random conversation. Now I want to say he's about 10 years older than me, right? So we were talking. And we were just having a conversation about sex. At a certain point, he's married. He's in his, he's been married several times. But this time, I would say he's been married to 2 Black women. And this marriage he's in now is with a non-Black woman. And he talked to me about his experiences. Appreciate the support, Drew. Thank you. And one of the things he said that happened when he first got with his current woman is, he said they had sex a couple of times. And he talked about, and he and I always talk about the conditioning of Black males. We are conditioned in many ways to serve women in relationships. And I can say I've had that experience as well. I mean, the way even in high school, the way even in junior high that we talked about sex, especially amongst my boys, the idea was your perceived manhood was predicated on how pleased she was with you, not only in bed, but also in terms of how you treated her in general. And, you were rewarded by how she talked about you. So the way we kind of got down, she had 3 or 4 orgasms before you took off any clothes, before you got into anything. That was the kind of idea. And I'm just kind of sharing with you the mind state. So he and I have that same mind state because we come out of roughly the same era. And that's the way we've been socialized to act in relationships. But here's the thing. He said after he did this, at one point, his lady stopped and she said, okay, I've had several orgasms already, as is usual, right, with us. She said, but what do you like? She said, what do you need me to do for you so you can feel as pleasured as you make me feel? Now, I would say when this happened, he was probably on the cusp of 50. I'm guesstimating based on how long I've known him in the time frame. He's probably close to 50. And one of the things he shared with me is that no one had ever asked him that question before. And the thing that got me about that, as he shared that, was I said the same to him. The first time a woman asked me that question was probably about 5 or 6 years ago. It had never dawned on me that anybody would ask. And here's the thing. We both had the same response when asked: silence. Now, we can talk about the generic things that most men like. You can talk about BJs and what, but she was actually asking a deeper question. She didn't have a problem performing that. But her thing was, what else do you need? And this is how far she went into the conversation when he shared it with me, right? She asked about his fetishes. She asked about his sexual interests. She pulled up pictures of women that were built in the way he likes. And she said, based on, what I've seen you glance at, based on her own body, she pulled up pictures and asked him questions. And they really started to have a deep conversation about sex and about what he liked, what he wanted, what he needed, what he was interested in. And she actually pushed him to share what men are generally not inclined to share for the most part, because it wasn't about whether or not it immediately complimented her. She actually put her ego to the side and she just said, what is it that you like, even if it doesn't, point back to me? And what he shared with me in that moment was that, again, no one had ever asked him that before. And here I was, trying at first interested in making the argument that was somehow common, but I had to be real. When I thought about it, I realized I only had one person ask me that. And I didn't have an answer either. Because even early on at a young age, when I first was introduced to sex, it wasn't about what was mutually pleasurable. It was about what I was socially expected to do for her. Because again, the idea is my manhood is predicated on how well I please her. And young Black boys, especially in the 80s, really got this message deep, because we came up in the whole era, the R&B era, the please her era, what you needed to do. And that didn't, again, it wasn't limited to sex. It was everything from creating the ambiance to the music to, the actual sexual act and everything that happened before and after. And the goal was to make sure that she was pleased. She spoke well of you. I knew brothers, man, that couldn't rub $5 to get 2 pennies together, but they could put together a dinner, candlelight. They had massage oil. And this was stuff that we were sharing with each other from early high school through college, sharing techniques, sharing all kinds of stuff, right? Tools you could use so you could go longer, tools that you could use, to get it up. I mean, men were scientists with this, right? We were scientists with it, the kind of conversations we had. And brothers would pride themselves on how long we could have sex without, climaxing. You could go hours, right? And the more she seemed pleasured, the better off you were. But here's the thing. Very few of us had actually pondered and meditated on what it is we necessarily wanted, what we wanted to experience, what kind of things we wanted to do. We did what prioritized her. And this kind of goes into what I talk about in terms of the whole notion of the CompuServe. I talk about, even just the mentality of prioritizing her. So this is what spawned the question. Obviously, I'm not talking about, when I ask if Black men are virgins, are we virgins in terms of the actual act of intercourse? I'm actually talking about it on a deeper level. Have we actually pondered pleasure beyond the obvious? Have we actually pondered and actually had partners that sought to find ways to prioritize us in bed to the same extent that we have been taught to prioritize her. There's a a post that Dr. Stacy Patton put up. And I'm going to share it with you, but I think it's interesting. It's not directly on the same topic, but it's in the ballpark. It's really small, so I don't think I'm gonna put it on the screen, but I'll read it to you. It's a text from a father to a son. And so the son actually shares that he wants to go out, right? He wants to go out on a date. And the father texts him back and says, that's fine. He says, I want you home absolutely no later than 7:30. Public places only, no homes, no private rooms, no nakedness. And I got those kind of messages when I was a teenager that pissed me off. And as a father, I completely understand them because I ain't trying to be a grandfather. Yeah, my son and I definitely had those conversations. Stall me out on that, man. I ain't ready for that. But anyway, he continues. Comport yourself as a gentleman, respectful, polite, open doors. Appreciate that, John. Thank you. John says, thank you for helping build my psychological fortitude as a Black man. No doubt, man. Appreciate that. All right. And I'm going to bring some of y'all up because I want to know what experiences you have. But anyway, let me continue. So he also texts. He says, open doors, offer to pay for everything. Listen way more than you speak. She's the boss. You're simply honored she chose to spend time with your goofy behind. Your job is to be chivalrous, courteous, and kind. Appreciate that, War Child. I appreciate the support. He says, your job is to be chivalrous, courteous, and kind while simultaneously being protective and strong. You're a man, but moreover, you're my son. Conduct yourself accordingly. And then he communicates that he loves his son. Shout out to him. Fathering. That's what's up. I would send much of this to my son as far as when to be home, where to be and where not to be. Whether that actually happens, y'all know, probably not. It damn sure didn't when I was a teenager. But the crux of this that I want to get at, he's partially being playful, but he's not. He says, listen way more than you speak. She's the boss. You're just honored she chose to spend time with you. And this is why I'm calling this show part 2 to the short video I did a while back on our Black women good in bed. And really what it has to do with is this prioritizing, this hyper prioritizing of women, especially as it relates to sex. And one of the things we've been taught is that she's doing us a favor. It is a gift to have sex with women. I'm more of the Patrice O'Neal school of thought, where sex, if done properly, should be mutually beneficial, just on the basis of the act. Especially when you're talking about Black men that have spent decades learning the art of pleasuring women. It is not a gift or a favor, right? Fair exchange is no robbery. It should be mutually beneficial. Right? We don't often teach it that way, but that's really what it should be at the end of the day. And I think men should definitely take the perspective that, this is not something that, you should be feeling like some kind of favor was done for you and you need to be overly grateful. No. As a matter of fact, many Black men that I've spoken to don't even really spend a lot of time thinking about what they enjoy in bed. It's strictly a matter of pleasing her. And I think it's time for a new conversation, because if you're at 50 years old and it's the first time a woman asks you what she can do beyond the obvious, and sometimes the obvious doesn't even work. Not all men enjoy the same things we see in porn every 5 seconds. Men have different needs. But to what extent do we express that? This is why the previous video I did, one of the things we talked about was the difference between ejaculating and orgasming. And most people assume that for men, they're one and the same. And women have definitely been taught that it's one and the same, but so have many men. Many men don't climax, they ejaculate. And they're two different things, right? But at the same time, many men, starting from boyhood, they're not told there's a difference between the two, and we're definitely not told how to pursue that difference and explore what it is we really like. Now, if you go back to Curry and Utley's She Touched Me, one of the things they talk about is how that kind of sensory dynamic in boyhood can be disrupted by sexual violation. What does that mean? Well, it means the very way you process pleasure can be disrupted by being violated at a young age, even when it's with a woman. You know what I mean? You can have that process interrupt your natural development, and you still may find yourself acting out things in relation to early violation because that was how you were introduced to sexual pleasure. So that can become a barrier for actually being able to experience pleasure beyond the surface, beyond the obvious, right? And of course, as long as the dominant narrative is that men only need, and again, this is a quote I said in the last video, men only need a wet hole to be pleasured by. There's a world of things that men don't find themselves exploring about themselves, partially because many of them have never been introduced to the idea, but also if you've not had a partner prioritize your interests or even ask you what they are. And if you've not spent any time exploring that, it can be a pretty earth-shattering experience. And this is what my brother and I were talking about. He was sharing with me what it was like to actually be asked that at 50 or near 50, and then to have several years after that of being able to explore it. And one of the things she told him, no judgment, no criticism. I just want to know what pleasures you. Yeah, very different, right? So those are the kind of things that I'm interested in today, right? Because when we talk about how many of our women have been socialized, we got to go to understand what that looks like today. Now, some of you guys, sorry, more logistics issues in my studio here. All right, come on now. There we go. All right. So some of you guys have seen this week. I will obviously read it for our radio audience, but it's also a bit small to see. So for that, I apologize. Try and bring it up a little bit. But this is April Mason. And this has been going all over YouTube in the last couple of days. April Mason is or at least she was, dating coach, matchmaker, whatever you might want to call it. And she apparently retired from the game, right? And so she writes on her post here, why I am closing my dating academy and getting out of the business of helping women in this way. Same reason why I closed my matchmaking service in 2013. She says, after 10 years of helping women in this area, it's time to move on. I had dozens of success stories from women who are now married, engaged, or dating high caliber men. My track record speaks for itself. However, the majority that come to me have unrealistic expectations, the selfishness, fake everything, think they should be chosen because they have a vagina and good looks, the entitlement, just mean, not knowing the difference between being a woman and a wise woman, and will fight you to be strong, not knowing how to be versus do, thinking being a feminine woman is weak or a pick-me, whatever that is, placing the blame and not taking responsibility or accountability for the choices they make in men. Being disagreeable, defensive, argumentative about everything, always finding something to nitpick about, looking for perfection. If you mention anything about doing something kind for the man they chose, it's the what is he going to do for me? And the list goes on. Now, this doesn't excuse men's behavior. A lot of men think that they are high earning, think because they are high earning, it makes them a high value man. Not. I've just made my contribution and impact in this area for decades to come. I have over 50 courses that women who may be in need of help can check on, so on and so forth. So she kind of goes from there. But she says a wise woman knows how to exit on a high note. Right? So when I talk about the way women are socialized, the reason I talk about it is because if we're going to get to this question of whether or not Black men have had mutually beneficial sexual experiences with partners who are as interested in their pleasure as they are in their own, this post says a lot. It says a lot because it says something about the mind state of many of the women that Black men interact with. And we all know April wasn't alone, right? If you haven't seen this post by Rebecca Lynn Pope on Facebook, you've been out of the loop for a while. Right? This is just a shorter clip of a longer post, but it was an interesting thing that came out a few years ago, where very prominent. I think she's Atlanta-based, relationship coach, matchmaker, the whole deal. Also retired from matchmaking women, and she actually said the same thing April did in a section, because April also reiterates in her comments to that post that men were much easier to work with because they didn't have the same kinds of entitlement that women did. But Rebecca said the very same thing, and this was a post that went all over YouTube and social media a few years ago, because most of us didn't expect some of these coaches to come out and be so public about what they were experiencing. Now, some of them kind of tried to walk that back a little bit, because you don't find a lot of Black women that are willing to talk about sisterhood. They're often critiqued and challenged in all kinds of problematic ways, and run the risk of losing their businesses. So, but nevertheless, Hasan, appreciate that support. Let me see. Hold on. See, Kasonk says, first time I was asked was with a white girl. He said, I was 49. She was soft, loving. She cared. It wasn't just about exploring fantasies, but a real connection. See, and here's the thing. I'm not saying that you can't have these experiences with a woman of any background. The question is, has she been primed for such? Has she been socialized in a manner where your sexual pleasure is even a priority? But beyond just the sexual pleasure, as Kasonk accurately points out, and I hope I'm not mispronouncing your name, brother. If so, I apologize. Was there even an attempt at a connection? Now, this doesn't have to mean you marry for 50 years and ride off into the sunset, but a connection can simply be that you're actually in bed with somebody that's just as interested in you getting off as they are. It could be that simple, right? But if you're actually dealing with the kinds of women that both April and Rebecca are talking about, that's probably not as likely. We can add Ayanna Van Zant to this list, right? We know very recently, I believe this year, she came out and said that she was done as well. And she also pointed to the entitlement issues and so on that many of the women she dealt with gave her. And you can actually watch this on her show. She had a lot of, kind of battles with women that she was trying to help. And for a good portion of that time, it came back to the same kinds of issues, right? The same kinds of entitlement that, she experienced. So, this is the crux of the question. And I am going to get to what I think the solution is, or a solution is, in a moment. But what I would like to do is actually get some people to come on in. And if you could, I'm gonna bring you guys in one at a time. And I just want you to be, fairly brief. If you're interested in coming up and sharing anything on the topic, share with us your thoughts about, what we're talking about. Okay? So I put the link in the comment section. And I think it should go out to Facebook and YouTube. So hold on, let me bring the first brother. Oh, Marcus. Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I had to get my sound together. What's going on?
He jumped in first, didn't even have a sound together. He's like, I gotta put something in on there.
Oh, you must have saw me and just cracked up. Like, let me in. Let me in. Gotta speak on this.
Come on, man. What you got to say about this, man?
Man. Man, you already know, man. When the women are falling back, you know it's a problem. When they can't help you, when the female counselors can't counsel the women, when the police can't police the police, it's over. It's over.
Oh man, it's rough. It's rough, bro. Because these are things that Black men have been experiencing for a while now. And the funny part is, it's taken generations really for Black men to speak up about their experiences. And one of the things I'm starting to see more of is I'm starting to see more Black men policing the Black men who are finally speaking up and trying to get them to be quiet and accept whatever is placed in front of them yet again. And I think one of the things it does is it really dismisses the depth of the issue, the depth and breadth of it. You know, because those who watch my show know we deal with this from politics to culture to history across the board. Now, today we're talking about sex, and you know, and I'm not a relationship counselor. I generally don't do a lot of that, but for the most part, I talk about policy, I talk about history, and I think a lot of the issues that are going on in terms of gender in our community are really much deeper than people give them credit for. But today we're talking about sex, and I'm asking the question about, you know, whether or not, you know, Black men are having experiences that are mutually beneficial. What are your thoughts on that, brother?
When you say mutually beneficial, you mean and you mean in the sex department. I think when you initially posted about this, you were talking about orgasms or something of
Mhm.
that nature. Yeah,
Well, but sexual or exploration, it could be that as well. You know what I mean? But just getting into and express, like for example, one of the things I foregrounded this conversation with is how many Black men that I knew in my generation that grew up learning that sex was really about pleasing her,
yeah,
right? To
yeah.
the degree that, you know, most of the brothers I'm talking about have never actually been asked, how can I provide you with a similar experience? You know what I'm saying? So you have anything to drop on that?
Yeah, you know, we see it not just I mean, we learn it in our circles, we learn it in media and things like that. All we learn is, you know, that women are not satisfied in sex, and you know, it's about pleasuring her, and you know, they make the condoms to pleasure her and all these things to pleasure her. You know, with the ribbed condoms and the beaded condoms and you know, all of these things, and you got guys who go buy toys and this and that and yada 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 yada, all of this stuff, right?
Right.
You know, and if you can't keep it up, it's your fault, and if she don't get wet, it's your fault, and everything is your fault.
Because it's because it's a favor she's doing for you by being there,
Yeah, it's a
allowing you.
she's giving you the privilege
Yes.
to give her pleasure.
Yes.
I don't
Yes.
know if you I don't know I don't know if you remember Sugar Hill, right? There's the scene in Sugar Hill where what's his name tells Teresa Randall, he says, I'm gonna let you suck my, you remember this?
Wesley Snipes. Is that what
No,
you're
no,
talking about?
Wesley Snipes is in the movie, but it was Von D. Curtis Hall's character. I think he was a
Okay.
ball or
He was
something.
a ball player. Yeah.
Yeah, he's assaulting Teresa Randall, and then that's what he tells her. When I first heard it, pardon me, but I thought it was funny. The way he said it, he's like,
Hmm.
all right, so now I'm gonna let you. So I'm
Hmm.
gonna let you. So these
Yeah.
women are looking at it like, I'm gonna let you
Right.
pleasure me. I'm gonna give you the privilege and the honor of making me feel good.
Right. And the funny part about that is he had to be a rapist. I mean, he was slapping her around. You know, the character. So the one character you see that actually, you know, requires being pleasured the same way men are socialized to pleasure women, especially in our community. The only character you hear that from has to be an abuser slash rapist in a movie,
Yeah,
and he's
yeah,
got to be an asshole at that, right? He's all of that kind of.
yeah.
But
All,
but the very idea of what he's saying is often, I argue, how young Black men are socialized to think of what sex is supposed to be, except that they serve. So I'm in complete agreement with you. I didn't even register that scene when it happened. It just went over my head. I you know I didn't even know how to process that.
yeah, it's a job for us. You know, most women, I can't say all, but most women do not, they don't play an active, they're not an active participant in sex.
Mm, yeah,
You know,
yeah, yeah.
we usually use speech like, oh, can you take the D, right? Can you take it? And that's pretty much what they're doing. They just take it.
Hmm.
You understand? Now, of course,
Yeah.
you get your exceptions to the rule, but most of them just take it. It's like you watch The Color Purple, and we know what that is. She's just taking it. She doesn't even want it, but she's just taking it.
She doesn't even want it. Right.
She don't even want
Right.
it.
But I noticed that even in high school, right? It was this, sex was she just laid there. And you were supposed to do things that blew her mind. And if they weren't mind blowing, it was your fault. So here you are, you have to figure this woman out and please her, whether you knew her or not. And that was sex. Now she may do a few things, you may get her to do a few, but for the most part, the very definition is please me.
Think about this, right? Now you got books on the G spot and all this other stuff, right? Written books about it. Asking a woman to do anything that might pleasure you, right, is demeaning. It's considered demeaning, right? Anything that you might do for her that just solely benefits her. And then when people, what is a common thought that comes to your mind when people say the word foreplay?
Right.
What is the first thing that comes to your mind?
First thing that comes to my mind, all the things I need to do to get her ready.
Yes.
I mean, especially in high school, that was kind of how foreplay was taught to me. That's what it was. Get her ready.
Yeah. Foreplay is very gynocentric. It's a gynocentric term.
Yeah. It's not mutual.
No.
We men, I'm not saying men can't take pleasure out of it, but it's not framed in a way where it's mutually constructed. It's you getting something out of doing something for her, and it's a one-way kind of dynamic.
Yeah.
And you're kind of graded on how well you do at that.
Yeah. Foreplay is like we always say, like the first thought that comes to our mind when we hear the word foreplay is pleasing her, getting her ready, right? For the for taking the D, right? Where you got to get her ready and open to you getting your thing off, right? You got to get her in the mood. Like, oh, she doesn't want it. You got to give her foreplay so she wants it, right? So you kind of
well, no, I want you to finish your statement. Go ahead.
It's almost like the act of, the actual sex isn't something that is for her. The foreplay is like you have to get her in the mood to even for her to consider doing you the favor of taking the D, right? When you hear foreplay, you don't think of you getting anything out of it.
Well, and keep in mind, foreplay isn't just physical, right? And this is something that I remember guys talking about as early as junior high. I remember having conversations about how you needed to stimulate her mentally. You know what I mean? And this is the era where I'm old enough to remember you having to talk to a girl on the family phone and you had to find a way to kick game while your family might be sitting there. So you had to be extremely skilled and adept. Like you had to know how to talk. You had to have a mouthpiece because you only had a couple chances on the phone or whatnot. But foreplay was this idea. It was something that you had to do to stimulate her before you even get to the physical act, right? And then there was another layer of it at that point when you're in the room. So there's just layers of it, right? So this whole warming up thing you're talking about has multiple levels on it, right? But any final thoughts before I transition to someone else in here?
Yeah. So as far as men being virgins, I think that might be something that is happening more so like more recently. I can think of a lot of guys, like being around the industry and all the different things that I've been around. I often tell people they'd be surprised at how many men are not sexually active due to not being chosen. And the last thing is, when, like I said, when it comes to sex between men and women, the thought is like I said, anything that you will derive pleasure from that's not mutual pleasure will, be viewed as negative or demeaning. And the opposite is almost like, you're doing your job, you're a real man, et cetera, et cetera. Like, you're a desirable sex partner.
Mm-hmm.
It's this idea that we are to give,
Yeah.
and get nothing in return. So, but that's typical. That extends beyond sex, but no
Uh,
problem, man.
hey,
Thank you for having me on.
hey, man, thanks for coming through. Y'all support the Keep It 100 channel. Go check him out. When's the next video dropping, man?
Probably tonight, man. We got to wait for the guy with all the ratings to be done talking, and then us little guys
You guys. Anyway, all
at
right,
the party on my channel.
all right, man. Thanks for coming through, bro.
All
Appreciate
right, man.
it.
No doubt. Peace. Thanks a
Peace.
lot. Peace.
And he raised something significant as far as virgin. Now, obviously, I'm stretching the concept because I'm not actually limiting, or defining virginity solely by intercourse. I'm actually arguing that far too many Black males have been introduced to intercourse long before they're introduced to what actually can be pleasurable about intercourse beyond just the physical act, especially if it happens when you're underage, right? Or particularly under 10. That's just damaging, or can be. Anyway, so I am playing with that, but there are some virgins who commented in the comment section, or some who haven't had sex until they were almost 40. And shout out to those brothers if that is something you chose. Now, if it's something you didn't choose, then it's a whole nother issue. But I'm talking about virginity in the broader sense, in terms of actually having a meaningful connection beyond the expectations people have of you simply on the basis of you being Black and male. So let me bring in Mr. Z. What's going on, Mr. Z? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me, sir?
Yes, sir. How you doing?
Finding you. I I wanted to jump on this because of the virgin conversation. Because I
Mhm.
remember having I see what you did there and how you extended it, and um that was actually really interesting what you did with the word virgin. But I remember having a couple of friends in my college years that when I stayed in touch with them and we would occasionally talk, they were virgins well up to 30,
Yeah.
29 and 28 years old. So, I understand you spoke about it at a different angle, but
Hmm.
that is something
Yes.
to consider, right? And a lot of men are finding themselves stuck in this weird situation, I would argue, because okay, put it this way. We know what it's like to be desired.
Hmm.
I think one of the worst things that can ever happen is when you as a man, every single situation you've ever been in has been transactional
Yes.
with women. And
Yeah.
I think that is soul crushing because you get to see other men be desired,
Hmm.
but you always have to be the guy that essentially pays for it. And I could just imagine what that, oh man, just the thought of it just
Yeah. Well,
yeah,
no, you raised something significant, because I can tell you I had an incident a few
Mhm,
years ago in my Black male studies course, where I had a young man who was, his college age. I say he probably was about 22, 23, and he professed to being a virgin in the class. Now, at this
mm,
time, the majority of my students were black women, and I remember that they joined in together to laugh at him
mm,
in the class. Now, of course, I went to protect him, because But here's the thing: he was actually very religious, and for him, he didn't find it a slight to his character. He had actually found it to be something very, he did it. It was purposeful for him.
mhm,
He wasn't apologetic or ashamed about it. So he held his head up high. And I noticed that before I even stepped in to defend him, or even just raised the question: why is it that a Black male who chooses to be a virgin is someone to be
mm,
ridiculed? Because this man was saying he was waiting till marriage. And I had nothing but respect for him on that. He was serious about it. It wasn't a game. He wasn't playing, and if I remember correctly, he actually did get married a couple of years after that. But my point was, the very idea of being Black, male, and virgin was laughable to most people in
mhm,
that room. And that's what I took issue with. I'm like, why is that the case? And the reason was, when we got down to the core of it, is that Black men are considered to be so hypersexual, even within the Black community, that to be a virgin is a joke. It just, the
Yeah.
only way that it was interpreted was as a character flaw of some sort,
Hmm.
not a choice on his behalf. So, any
It
thoughts?
it happens.
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was saying that that definitely happens. I mean, it's the environment, and dovetailing off what the brother earlier was saying, I do think because of the current environment, we will see a increase in young adult male virginity, and I don't know
Mhm,
how much of that will be because of choice or because of
mhm.
circumstance.
Right, right.
I think much of that is going to be because of circumstance. It's just
Mhm,
going to be interesting to see how the dominant society in the media speaks about it when that happens, because I foresee that becoming a thing, you
okay,
know.
okay.
And I wanted to touch on one more subject before I get off, which is what you were speaking about with the April Mason lady. And
Mm,
you know, Dr. Johnson, the environment, man. I actually made a video about this where I spoke about, the how the media, and you were actually speaking about this earlier when you were speaking about how you viewed homes when you were younger. And
mm,
I think expound that out to what little girls were consuming
mm.
20 and 30 years ago, and those girls are now women,
Yes.
right? So
Mhm,
those girls are now women, and they had millions, if not billions of dollars directed towards them about a certain lifestyle that they should try to achieve. And
yeah.
now those girls that are now women are who Rebecca Lynn Pope are running into, April Mason's
Mhm,
running into, and
mhm.
that delusion didn't come out of nowhere. So
Yeah,
it's multiple things that compounded into this delusion that's,
yeah.
in my estimation, is going to cause these women to be very miserable as they get older, because they can't. I think it's too late. I don't think you could get them out of that. Unfortunately, it's just going to be really sad. I'm in my mid 30s. I'm just imagining watching these women walk into 40, walk into 50, walk into even 60, and always have these ideas in their mind and
Mhm.
never get to it. You
Oh, and
know.
that's extremely important because I think one of the things they got, because you're talking about, I had a little sister, so when I was playing with He-Man and Transformers, she had Barbie and all that, and the Barbie houses, and I remember that. And but what that morphed into is, with feminism, especially in
Hmm.
the Black community, is what I call a one-way traditionalism, right? Because
Yep.
these women once introduced to feminism, of course, this was appreciate that support, Tim. One of the things that we noticed happen is they played with those toys as little girls, but by the time they started to transition into young womanhood, elder women started telling them that they have to get the bag. Of course, that wasn't
Hmm.
the language they were using in the 80s. The language then was kind of niggas ain't shit. You need to be able to stand on your own, blah, blah, blah. And they were they were also by policy, had more access to college, they had more access to white collar employment, and so this idea of the Barbie house transitioned into something that they had to secure for themselves.
Yeah.
But to complete the image, you needed a man standing there, right? So, but what men were told by these very women was very one way. It was a one way traditionalism. You need to
Hmm.
provide and protect. And even if I make more money than you, your money is our money. My money is my
It's
money.
my money.
So you pay for the house, and I've had women do this. They've asked me to
Hmm.
buy $900,000 houses. You buy the house, you pay the bills. Listen to the twist. You cook and clean and take care of the kids. I want to be a full time whatever I'm doing. My money
Hmm.
is my money alone. Your money takes care of us, and you need to take us on international trips, on a regular basis.
Wow.
You know what I mean? And it's like, wait a minute, what? But that's the dynamic. So that Barbie dynamic morphed into some of the things we're seeing with April Mason and Rebecca Lynn Pope and Ayanna Van Zandt, and it morphed into not only a selfishness and
Hmm.
a narcissism, if you will, a kind of a
Hmm.
wider spread cultural narcissism, but it also turned into an expectation that men provide the material reality for her to live that dream, but she gets to own and keep everything to herself.
But
And that doesn't even include divorce.
and so how is this supposed to work, Dr. Johnson, when I know these numbers off the top of my head. I recite them all the time. Half
Mhm.
of American men make $38,000 and some
It is.
change a year.
It is.
Only 8% of Americans are millionaires, and that's hard assets. That's
It is.
not even liquid. So how
Exactly.
is this supposed to work for
Right.
the masses of women, especially when we count, the recent Washington Journal article about, 60% of the college enrollment is now women, 40%
Hmm.
men.
Hmm.
And within the next decade, it's supposed to be 2/3, so 66-33. How, I don't know how this math works. The math
It
ain't
doesn't.
mathing.
It doesn't. And that's why you have the marital rates where they are. That's why you have the high divorce rates. Because at the end
Hmm.
of the day, women have cultural expectations that
Hmm.
nobody can meet. They themselves can't even meet. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We see this literature in the media about boss chicks and whatever, but the reality is women actually, even in the black community, earn less than men. As far as men that are actually working, right? So they're not even able to live up to these ideas that they espouse, and yet expect men to make up the difference. And when it's not feasible for men to do so, you
Hmm.
have women leaving men in record numbers because
Yeah.
the expectations can't be met. So any final thing before I transition to the next person?
I'll end with this. Like you said, the entrepreneurship before COVID-19, I think it spiked after the initial COVID thing, but it was at a 40-year low in America. So
Mhm.
when people speak about these things, and I like how you end often your streams where, we're not walking wallets, and I actually want to make a video about that, but we're not just these tools, these utilities, right? And
Right.
that's what I'll leave the brothers here with tonight. Just, we're not these tools, we're not these utilities, and you got to do for you, right? April Mason and Rebecca Lynn Pope, these are people, they're literally working with women and they can't even do it no more. Right? So, I'll just end with that. I don't want to go on a tirade, but thank you once again for having me up, Dr.
Hey
Johnson.
man, appreciate you coming up. Send me the link when you do that video.
Okay, thank you.
All right, man. Peace.
Mhm.
Right. We have an audience favorite. Welcome my boy Malika in the building. How you doing?
Peace, peace, big brother. How you doing?
Doing well. How about yourself, man?
I'm doing well too, man. It's
Man,
always a pleasure to deal with the Sorcerer Supreme of the Manosphere.
you crazy. Well, what's up, man? Drop it on us, man. What do you got on this? What do you think?
I wrote in your chat that black men, but especially us black men that I noticed from Gen X era, we are engineered and we were created to always pleasure women, even though that they say that we're hypersexual, and a lot of times, a lot of us were often stereotyped of being sexual predators and whatnot, and the super predator moniker.
Mm-hmm.
You said it, man. You broke it down like we had an era of where you had nothing but a lot of R&B songs. We made special mixtapes where we would chill with our girls in our cars, do whatever it is we, on bended knee, do everything. When
You
we
remember that
how
that album?
as many guys, man, we will, rewind, pause, look at porn on a VHS and figure out this is what I got to do to a chick. But the thing is, we're being conditioned to please women, and we're never thought about being pleased ourselves. And when you said that, men, even though that we've had many experiences with sex, one of the biggest problems is when you're talking about that virgin, is that we never experience true intimacy.
Yes.
And this is the problem.
Yes.
And here's another
Yes.
thing. Our female counterparts haven't experienced true intimacy either, because in the black community, we're not raised to know what intimacy is. And
Mm-hmm.
it's not just sexual, physical intimacy, it's mental intimacy. My best friend
Mm-hmm.
told me this when we were in our early 20s. He says, sex is 10% physical, it's 90% mental. And that stuck with me.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times we're switching the reverse. We're thinking it's only 10% mental, but we're dealing with the 90% physical, because
Mm-hmm.
that's how the way we were geared. Remember, we were talking about the buck and we were
Yeah.
talking about the stereotypes. The African American male has always been geared to be the buck.
Yes.
Just with Birth of a Nation, we're talking about the very original one,
Mm-hmm.
W.D. Griffith's one.
Yep.
We have been programmed to be the buck, and it's
Yes,
been
sir.
programmed throughout all that way. Even to when it comes to pleasing our women, we have to be the prototypical buck. You
Mm-hmm.
have to please her. And also within her mindset that, especially within the past 40 years, dealing with feminism and dealing with black women having their own, and the rise of Alice Walker, Oprah, and a lot of literature and a lot of media put out there, black women don't have to please the men. And a lot of women, you're having a lot of relationships where a woman may give a man oral sex. You always hear that, I'll give you oral sex on your birthday or Valentine's Day, or the man is always pleasing his woman, but she's never really pleasing him.
Man, look,
You,
let me tell you. I can't tell you over the last 10 years how many men, some of whom have been students in my classes, have talked about the role of the buck and the mandingo in the bedroom, even in the Black community. We're not even talking interracially, because most of the time we talk about stereotypes that come out of slavery. We talk about interracial sex, but even within the Black community, I've had men say, I have women on a regular basis asking me to slap, to hold them down, to push them. Some ask to be punched. Some ask to be raped, as they say on YouTube, because we got to change the language, right? And these brothers are not saying I'm doing this with excitement, and they're saying I'm hesitant because what the hell is this? And of course, in this Me Too era, you put yourself in a very vulnerable position, even if you're playing out sex acts that she asks for, because if she so much as changes up on what happened and calls the police, what do you look like? Right?
exactly.
So we have these conversations where I'm trying to say you got to be extremely careful about whether or not you want to play out these sex games. But the question on the table for many of these men is, why are there so many women across race, including Black women, who are requiring that we dominate and or play out rape fantasies? And what we go back to is the buck. What we go back to is the mandingo. We go back to the old narratives of the sexually dominant Black man who's going to just take it. And a lot of people want to blame Black men just for that. And for a given Black man that rapes somebody, then do what you need to do. Of course, he needs to go. He needs to be locked up, as it were. But when you're talking about a larger question where Black men experience this, and we're not even getting into the BDSM community, right? And the social expectations of Black masculinity in those spaces, they're still the same narratives, right? Here, I'll give you an example. One of the assignments I give my students when I teach my Black male class is they're responsible for going to different porn websites and looking up the different terms used to describe Black men. And the terms in and of themselves are always aggressive. They're always, domineering. They're monstrous in some ways. Even just the terms, and we're not even talking about what happens in the porn or what the language is in the video. We're talking about just the names and the terms used to describe Black men. So this is a legacy that's very deep in American culture, so much so that it plays out in our own community, and there's no venue to talk about it. And when Black men start to talk about it, we have other Black men that'll stand up and say, well, be quiet. You need to be quiet. You're whining. We just need you to just accept what's happening. And sometimes even just focus on, everything but what we're no. This needs to be talked about. It needs to be pulled out of the closet and described and analyzed. It's past time that we do so. Because at the end of the day, even if you are a participant in something, in an act that two adults want to engage in, you can still find yourself as a Black man vulnerable to how this can be used against you. So we have to be able to have a more nuanced dialogue about this. Any last thoughts before I bring in the next guest?
You hit the nail right on the head when you mentioned Patrice O'Neal, because Patrice was just like Dave Chappelle. He's pricking your intellect, and he said, to also repeat and quote him, sex can be mutually beneficial.
Yes.
If both parties are willing to please one another.
Yes.
Now, here's the funny thing. See, now, when you're saying willing to please, everybody thinks automatic. Physical. No, it's not just physical. It's willing to please. Like when you're having the conversation of what you like. And it's not, see, the problem is we get trapped on that one level of physical. Oh, I'm not into this. I'm not into that. When you said your friend's lady was asking him an honest question, what turns you on? Meaning that she's really wanting to be engaged. What turns him on? Because she's not being selfish. She's being selfless because she wants to please him. One of the biggest problems that we're having now, and what April Mason and the other sister had, was that you're dealing with a lot of women. And another thing, this is what Kevin has 3-4 times out of the week. We're having a lot of our women, they're not willing to please
Mhm.
Us. They're not willing to please black men. And they're thinking pleasing black men sexually. It's not about the physical. It's about pleasing. It's about going out of your way to want to please a man. And
Mhm.
not just thinking it in, like you said, some different sex acts or different positions. It's not about that. And
Mhm.
the thing is, if you're asking what turns you on, and if you're having an open mind, no one's saying you have to do this. But if
Mhm.
it's stepping out of your comfort zone and being selfless, what turns you on? What do you like? Well, why do you like this particular body type? Why
Yeah.
do you like this particular position?
But
What
but
turns
not
you
but
on?
non-judgmentally, right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
And this is
non-judgment.
and this is the thing. But see, these are the conversations that black men and black women don't have. And a
Mm.
lot of times, a lot of black men are afraid to ask these questions of women because we're raised not to ask our black women anything.
Mhm.
We're raised to, like, how dare you ask these questions? Or if I say this, I might not get no pussy. Or I
Well,
might burn my bridges because I'm not going to get that. I'm not supposed to do this. I'll follow along with her. No, the thing is,
I'll do you one better. We're not only raised to not ask questions, we're raised to anticipate her sexual desires and figure them out. And the degree to which you're a good man, especially as in regard to intimacy and sex, is to how well you anticipate her interests without her having to say anything. That's one of
and
the
also you have to please her on top of that.
exactly.
And
Yeah,
if you don't please her, or if you can't anticipate it, because not all of us are telepathic, you're not a good man, or you're weak, or you don't understand women.
yeah, that's your failure. Yeah, yeah. Well, I appreciate you coming up, man, as usual, dropping it, So thank you, brother.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate you.
All right, man. We'll talk soon. Peace.
Okay.
All right. Let me welcome up the good doctor. Should I call you Dr. Goodbar, sir?
Oh boy.
Nah, man.
I know BGS is out there laughing right now.
Dr. Dunbar, man. How you doing?
Good, how are you, Dr. Johnson?
Doing well, man. You know the subject, man. I definitely am happy to hear from you. Give us your thoughts on this.
Okay, well, since me and you have our roots in the academy, I'm going to take it. My journey is going to take us back there.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm just going to say that I was a late bloomer,
Mm-hmm.
and just kind of late starting things. Came from the church going home, no men around. And so when I left the house at 18, there were just a lot of things that I had to figure out, on my own. And I had with our women, man, if you don't know what you're doing,
Right.
they can penalize you for that. I mean,
Right.
and they can shame you, and if this is a woman that's your girlfriend, you spend
Mm-hmm.
most of your time with her. There are women who will shame you and make fun of you and say some harsh things to you.
Mm-hmm.
And I got involved with someone like that during my graduate program. And as you guys just described, my whole mindset was pleasing her. And if something is not working out, it's my fault. I'm not doing something right.
Right.
And Dr. Johnson, I'll just say, man, there were a couple times when I almost walked out of my graduate program because of just the mental, the criticism, the lack of understanding, just the harshness that she expressed towards me over our sexual chemistry.
Mm-hmm.
And a couple of years later, I just didn't know that it isn't necessarily me. It may be her. It may be the way we fit together.
Mm-hmm.
And so a couple of years later, I was seeing someone else,
Mm-hmm.
similar issues, and she was diagnosing me with stuff. You have this, you have that. You need to go see a urologist. Wow. And I went, and I did. I did go see a urologist. He said, "Mr. Dunbar, your numbers are good. You're fine." And I said, yeah, I said, but me and my partner, we just can't seem to get on the same page. He says, "Well, maybe it's time to find a new partner." And I sat there and I looked at him like, I love her, but
right.
But maybe the problem isn't me. And then so many of us, as other gentlemen just described, so many of us have been indoctrinated to think that it's always us.
Yeah, it never crossed your mind that it could be something other than you.
Yes.
You actually had to have a doctor actually say that to you before it even registered. Like, wait, maybe her, maybe chemistry, it may be whatever. But we take it on ourselves because we're told that, sex is really our domain. We're supposed to make it happen, and we're supposed to feel lucky that she let us make it happen.
Yes. And the reality is there are quite a few women out there who don't know what they're doing. But it whatever happens, it's gonna land on our shoulders. So my message, especially to the younger men out there, is just be mindful. Sometimes it is the partner you're with, and if you guys are having a hard time, don't be afraid to go find a new partner.
Hey, I appreciate you dropping it, man. Tell folks when your next show is going to be and the name of your channel, how to find you.
Yeah, so I'm trying to build out my science channel. It's called Big Discussions 76 Science and Technology. I'm about to drop a video on Friday about malaria and the plasmodium. I just had a discussion with Nicole Ali last Friday.
Beautiful.
About prostate cancer. You guys should go check that out. But I'm dropping a video on Friday, and I'm going to have more guests. My background is in the biomedical sciences, but I want to expand the channel out into a STEM hub. So I'm going to have some of the tech guys come over and just really kind of build the thing out. So the channel's called Big Discussion 76 Science and Technology. I'll drop it in the chat when I drop down.
Beautiful. And thanks for coming through, man.
Yeah, but especially for the brothers, if you're on a path, if you're working on your PhD, your law degree, whatever, don't get ensnared in something that's gonna make you wash out.
Yeah, distract you to a great degree. Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
All right,
thanks a lot, man.
Take care.
All right, that was Dr. Dunbar, good brother. Support his channel. Let's see. We got brother 3000 GT Atlanta. What's up, man?
Hey, man, how you doing?
Good. How about yourself?
Hey, man, I'm good. I was going to talk about this bad in bed.
Okay.
But late bloomer myself.
Okay.
Just a nerd guy. Got a Harley Davidson at 26, and the lady I was with was surprised that I was still a virgin.
Oh.
But
are you still now, or you're saying up till 26?
Yeah. No, not now. But yeah, when I was 26, about like 12 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah. But just grew up in the church and stuff like that. But anyway, being that in bed, I was married maybe 8 years.
Okay.
Married 8 years. And just I guess dating my wife.
Mm-hmm.
I mentioned that she was a sloppy kisser.
Okay.
And since then, beginning of our relationship, she wouldn't kiss me intimately. She would just turn that off, even though that was something that I wanted or whatnot. I just jokingly just say, hey, you're a sloppy kisser. No, I didn't think much of it, just playing. She totally turned that off. She would not engage with that with me.
Well, and that can be it can be anywhere from how it was communicated to the fact that it was communicated, right? It could have been how you said it, but it also could have been the fact that you had something to say, and you never know. But continue. Go ahead.
Well, so let's say we got married, and after the ceremony, we went out party with our friends, and I'm looking at my clock, right? Because hey, I know what's going to go down. We just got married, right?
Right.
And so we finally get to the hotel, and she's ready just to go to sleep, and just she's so she's out of it. And so I had to ask her, hey, aren't we supposed to have this initiated, have this marital encounter? And she had to really kind of sigh and say, okay, let's do this.
That's not a good sign.
And
Yeah.
I, yes, it's not a good sign. So even that, or even going to the honeymoon, instead of enjoying our time together during the honeymoon, she'd rather watch garbage hotel programming. And I had to bring that up to her also. Shouldn't we be spending our time with each other and whatnot? Because like I said, I'm a late bloomer. So but to her, this wasn't really top of her list.
Yeah.
And
okay.
Go
what
ahead.
would you say? What would you say you learned from that experience, in terms of how you carry yourself now?
Oh my gosh. Well, I would say that being a nerd and a nerd with an edge, but men, we were looking for that relationship. We're looking for that connection. We just desire it, and so we will overlook a lot of things, just to continue the relationship because, instead of we're in that lack type of mindset.
Okay.
So looking back, seeing these red flags, of she's not able to be intimate, or there's a lack there, to walk away. But I'll say this one last thing, being in an 8-year relationship that's on a hiatus right now. When it comes to a lot of the times, like foreplay, you get that once and then you never get it again.
Okay.
One-time encounter or lingerie, dressing up in lingerie. You get that once and never get it again, and it's just sad. But I'll let you go with that.
All right, man. Appreciate you coming through.
All right, thanks.
Thanks. Now, look, I'm not here to judge anybody. I'm not a relationship counselor. I can say there are plenty of tools if there are men out there that are experiencing what this brother just talked about experiencing years ago. There are plenty of tools, plenty of resources out there to show you how to comport yourself, how to carry yourself, how to interact with women in different ways to get different results. Now, the manosphere is full of that. I'm not here to do that because there's been plenty who have already done it and done it far better than I can. However, I can say at the same time, when we're talking about this dynamic of, and shout out to Malika, right? This dynamic of shared and mutual intimacy, right? And a give and take, an exchange of those kind of pleasures in the shared space. That in and of itself, you definitely have to have a willing partner. And what I'm ultimately saying is, in terms of the cultural framework that we operate in, it does not socialize women in particular to see men as someone to extend pleasure to, rather someone that needs to give them pleasure. What is it that April Mason actually said? She said at a particular point, if you mention anything about doing something kind for the man they chose, it's what is he going to do for me, right? That is the mentality. So part of what men have to, the terrain we have to travail is finding partners that are willing to have that kind of exchange and the willingness to participate in a particular type of good faith, and being very careful about vetting those kind of situations, especially long before you end up married. So no judgment on anybody. Feel free to come on up, share your experiences. The question is, how can Black men, navigate this issue of intimacy? How can we even begin to talk about it and think about what we're experiencing differently? And we got what looks to be G Money. G Money, is that what you're going by?
Yeah, G Money. How you doing, good doctor?
I'm good, man. What's going on with you?
I'm good, man. I'm chilling. Great show again. Love the topic. Interestingly enough, I guess you could consider me kind of like a nerd, kind of with a hood type of edge to me.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit of a late bloomer by black men standards.
Okay.
But this is what I realized. Like when you start having sex,
Mm-hmm.
and you, I think that a lot of these women, even women of other cultures, because I've dated women of other cultures,
Mm-hmm.
and that's why I appreciate that ending that you say at the end of your show. A lot of them see us kind of like walking phalluses, like as dildos.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you pleasure them in bed, and they stick around for a while, and that's pretty much all you are to them, to some extent.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
yeah, kind
so
of
what I
interchangeable at that, right?
yeah, and a lot of them, you know, I've had some good relationships, but a lot of them don't really have much beyond the sex. There's no good conversation, nothing good to talk about. They don't share the same interests that I have, and I have a multitude of different interests outside of your typical one-dimensional interests that we're expected to follow as black men.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I like anime, I like comics, I like different types of things. You know, and a lot of times it's like, okay, let's get to the bedroom. You know, that's what you're here to do. You know, so, and you had a brother, like about I think 2 or 3 calls before. He made a powerful statement. And my advice to men, if you're ever in this situation about dating and it seems transactional, like with when you're dealing with a woman.
Okay.
Trust me, I've been in this situation. You don't need to go on dates with women to get them in the bedroom. If you find yourself in a situation where we're spending a lot of money, going on a lot of dates, you need to leave that situation immediately.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not a dating coach or anything, but it shouldn't take more than 2 or 3 dates if that's what your intention is. You know, to get a woman into the bedroom. You know, I had to learn that the hard way, and you know, a lot of what we have to be careful of as black men is to not be used as a wallet, not to be used as a walking dildo. You know, you're a human being. You know,
exactly.
just like what they say to you, just like what they say to you. Oh, if you value me as being a woman, you're a human being as well. You're a man as well. And any relationship that you find yourself in, you need whatever your needs are. You need to make sure your needs are being met. And I have a nonchalant attitude when it comes to relationships. I have my goals, my careers that I'm focused on, and that's what drives me. You know, women. You know, I like the company of women, but it's tertiary. You know, I'm not rushing being married. I don't have any children. You know, and a lot of times, like I don't have anything bad against the brothers who focus just on sex. But I noticed that not all the time, but with these type of brothers, they tend to be the stereotypical one-dimensional type of brother. You know.
Okay.
You know, I'm not saying that's in all cases, but that's what I've observed.
Okay. Look, man, I appreciate you coming up. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you, Doctor.
All right, man.
Thank you for having me.
Let's see. We're gonna bring up. I think it's Jamfar. I don't know how you pronounce that. Jamfar, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Is it Jamfar? How do you say that?
Yeah, it's Jamfar.
Okay. What do you guys? What are your thoughts on this? We're talking about intimacy. We're talking about social expectations of black men in bed. We're talking about to what extent women are even socialized to think of men as far as pleasure, as far as a human sexual engagement. What are your thoughts about any of this?
All right, thank you for having me on your show. You know, when I think about the topic, there's a saying that it reminds me of. It's basically it talks about how war is an extension of diplomacy, and in a way, I think sex is a extension of conversation. In a way,
okay,
you know, it's like and that's how I usually think about it.
Okay, so when you say an extension of conversation, expound on that.
Communication. Yeah, it's like a good portion of our conversation is nonverbal. It's basically body language. So what would sex be? And you have a situation where sometimes you have, it could be on both sides where the woman is when they engage in sex, it's purely the sex and it's not a conversation, if you're following what I'm saying. So it's no deeper meaning behind it. So it's rather shallow. And you'll notice when you engage in type of shallow conversations on both sides, is like eventually if you're talking to a person in conversation and it's always the superficial conversation, eventually you don't want to do it no more.
Well, I would say, first of all, if two people don't want to have meaningful sex, I ain't judging. It is what it is. Sometimes people just want to have a physical expression. I'm not judging it. If a man does want something more meaningful, you do have to, and I'm going with this conversation narrative because I like the language. You are going to have to cultivate that dialogue, cultivate that conversation. And that's what we're normally told, right? If the experience is poor, the connection is poor, it's men's fault. So I take it one step further. You are responsible for cultivating that, but we also have to accept that she may not be the one you can cultivate that with. You know what I mean? Especially with the culture we have. Again, I go back to April Mason. I go back to Rebecca Lynn Pope. I go back to Ayanna Van Zant. The cultural milieu that we're in, particularly in the Black community, is not one that generally produces women that have an idea about wanting to, as you say, have a conversation more so than get something out of. Whether it's monetary, whether it's sexual pleasure, she wants to get something out of because it's your job to serve her. And she may even collect men like chess pieces or whatnot to get different things out of different men at different times. So I think the first thing is we have to decide, or any given man in a given equation has to decide what he wants. If it's just, to hit, it is what it is. I'm not judging. If it's something deeper, then you're going to have to cultivate that, but she may not be the one to do that with, especially if that's not something that we promote in any kind of serious way. And I don't think we do. I mean, even when we talk about love and romance, a lot of the time it's still predicated, from a very gynocentric perspective. It's all about her in regard to love and romance or whatever. You know what I mean? So we have to actually cultivate and show. You almost have to teach someone how to engage you. But if she's not willing to, you can leave, you can get what you can get out of it and go. But we just have to kind of frame it differently. But go ahead, give us your.
It's like in terms of teaching people like how you speak. I know there's a mentioning of love languages. I'm not exactly sure about love languages and all that, but what I do know is that there is significant differences between how men and how women think. And in terms of that, you're trying to bridge the gap and so that we could to develop a way of communicating interpersonally between each other that extends from actual conversation into physical, and developing that is difficult, and it's not as you mentioned, you can't develop it with every woman, and not every woman is interested in that. She might not have the capacity. As the brother mentioned before, there's shallow women out there, and I've experienced that. It's like you get into a conversation and you realize there's no there.
Yeah.
All right. And so it's like you're trying to teach her, whenever you're trying to teach somebody, it's like in terms of personal growth, people fail to success, and that's my idea of it. So as she tries to develop herself, she's going to fail more likely, and then that might dissuade you from continuing on. It's like she's going to fail to eventually wherever she's trying to get to, potentially.
And I think and I appreciate you coming on. Thanks a lot, man. I'm gonna drop you down, but thanks for coming in and dropping your thoughts on this.
All right.
And I think, in many ways, again, we have to be honest with ourselves about what we want in a given engagement. And I don't have any judgment one way or the other. I don't care if you just want a one afternoon hit or if you want to marry. Appreciate that support, Henry. Whatever it is you want out of the equation, that has to be the beginning point. You got to be clear on what you want. But from there, actually putting your humanity on the table in terms of, saying, look, this is what I want out of this engagement. We'll bring my boy Ian in. This is gonna be the last guest for the night. What's up, brother Ian?
Peace, bro. How you doing?
I'm good, man. It's always good to hear from you. How you doing?
I'm well. It's a very refreshing topic. It's a good topic, needs to be said. The last caller, kind of, I didn't know what to say, but he brought out for me, some of my personal experience. I think, some in what the last caller and over. I don't think that women necessarily have the intellect to understand that sex is a communication of the self. I think that women can communicate submission or non-submission, but I don't think beyond that they are able to communicate the self in the same way that the man is made in terms of intellect to do that.
Okay.
And I think that's in a lot of ways why we are running into the problem with women, because I think in some degree we might expect too much, unless we're able to teach them. I don't think that we can actually expect them to understand what it means to communicate through a sexual relationship.
When you say teach them, tell us what you mean.
Well, experientially, I think first, there has to be a foundational spirituality that connects the two of you. There has to be a shared intimacy beyond, like the brother said, beyond just what communication is, because communication is mental. Yes, sex is mental, but I think sex even goes beyond the mental. And in a lot of ways you communicate part of your essence. And I think that's why when we get into why it's dangerous for children in a lot of ways to have sex early, it's because it's a soul engaging event and activity. And I think that you have to teach a woman to go deeper within her soul, because I think in a lot of ways women are not made as soulful as men. I mean, really, to be honest, that's just like the comedians, the best comedians are men, the best singers are men, the best creatives are men, because men, for whatever reason, and I'm not trying to be misogynist, I think just historically men are just more creative and are able to get more in touch on deeper levels spiritually as well. And I'll give you my own example.
Okay.
I don't want to be graphic or whatever, but I'm gonna say this. Because I'm a spiritual, everything else, because the brother said, if you just go after sex, you're not well. I'm very well rounded, and sometimes I go after sex. That's a thing. We're animals too. So, but I had a particular girlfriend, right? And for whatever reason, I just decided, because I was into qigong and tai chi, I decided I wanted to send love through my phallus to her while we were having sex, right?
Okay.
I did it, right? She started crying, right? And the reason I know that I did it, because she started crying immediately, right? But the confirmation is that she stopped. She says, oh, she wanted to tell me why she was crying. She says, oh, it's not that I'm hurting or anything. It's just I felt the love come through you. You see? So I don't think that the average woman is able to get there to that place, in a meaningful way in terms of communication, sexual. I think it takes the man, just in every other way. I think it takes the man to really teach her what sex means in terms of communication. And I don't think we can actually expect it. The culture is bad at teaching them the wrong way, but I don't think we can expect it, even just hands down, even if the culture has not done the job on them.
So wait, so on the average date that you may have had in the last, let's say, 5 years, do you find that you meet women that, whether they know as much or are comfortable as expressing themselves sexually as well as you are, have you found them willing to engage it, willing to try it, willing to
Well, I'm gonna say
open
this.
to something different?
I met Dion Fair. You know Dion Fair is the singer, right? I met her at a club over here in Atlanta, right? Okay. So after the club was over, because I was eating some raw coconut, and she was just, eyeballing me for a while, and she wanted some of my coconut. I didn't know who she was at that point, so I gave her some of my coconut. She was like, "What's that?" You know how they do, or whatever. So we end up talking for about two or 3 hours after everything was shut down. We were outside. She was getting eaten by mosquitoes. We stood out there. So we had a real connection, right? So the next day, right, I text her, like, I text her some kind of, I said, I told her how I felt. I said I had an orgasmic kind of experience with with her. Like, just an overall, because like I said, she didn't understand what I said orgasm, and all she thought about was this was a sexual thing, because her response was to that, right, was that you don't control me, as if I was trying to mentally, because there was already a connection and she was open to me. She saw it as if I was trying to seduce her physically, and all I was just doing was expressing how I felt overall as a human being, through our connection and through our presence.
So you're saying just through the dialogue, you felt an energetic sexual connection that didn't necessarily need to be. It wasn't necessarily an intention to be physical. You weren't trying to seduce her. You were just saying in the engagement, there was an energy between you, and you're saying she didn't understand that.
Yes. I was just telling her I appreciated that she made me feel that way. That's all I said.
And she took it as you were trying to make it physical.
Yes. Yeah.
Which in and of itself is not an inherent bad. You know what I mean? It's not an inherently bad thing if you were trying to make it physical.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with that. So I find that interesting in and of itself. But the idea that she couldn't accept that you actually just appreciated the engagement, that I find interesting.
Yes.
I mean, yes. That's not something you're capable of, because you have to just want to hit it. So that's the only reason you're going here. I see what you're saying.
But my thing is that she's a creative, and I'm like, how are you creative and you've been in that field all this long, and what I said is something that throws you off? I'm like, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I wonder if it's really a matter of they can't do it, or if they've been socialized to believe that you're not going to bring anything of substance to the table. You're just going to bring raw penis. You might try to get her for a few dollars. You know what I mean? Like the base level of expectation for many Black men is often very low as far as how women perceive us. So I'm wondering to what extent, she didn't even entertain that you might bring something that may challenge her entire worldview.
Yeah.
I mean, in a good way, in a way that benefited her.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm not, I won't get on the all women kind of thing, but I will say I do think. But again, I go back to the culture. I think the culture we're talking about, the very culture that April Mason is responding to, that Rebecca Lynn Pope is responding to, the culture that Black men have been responding to for decades or generations, and we've been trying to talk about to no avail. I think the culture we're talking about doesn't promote for Black women that Black men may actually want something of substance, may be willing to extend something of substance, may be beyond your experience.
Yes. Yes.
And so I hear where you're going with that, where she's not even expecting that you have something to say.
Yes.
That really even may challenge her to grow.
Right.
The basic expectation is that you're less than. And so so she's framing this all from her experience. So I think I see where you're going with that.
Yes.
Any last final statements before we?
Well, yeah. So I think maybe like a week or two later, She was like, "Oh, let's try it again." But I was done because I'm like, "You're not there," you know. Like she realized that she was too harsh in her response. You know, she realized that. You know.
So did you think that she was somebody you could have taught, or you think she was unwilling?
No, she like I said, I think to some degree, I think to some degree, if you show, I think to some degree what the issue is, if you show an ability to be more intimate than them, that is intimidating.
Okay.
So I think what she had to do was check her pride to some degree. She was like, because in a lot of relationships I've been in, I had to teach a lot of the women how to love and how to be more loving. I did. I mean, just to be honest, I had to do that for a lot of them.
Well, I mean, I could say any brother standing on the street corner eating a coconut, you might have to go into it thinking, I'm gonna learn something here. I'm gonna learn something here. Well, look, man, I appreciate you coming up here. I appreciate you coming up, man. You take it easy.
Hey, appreciate you. Love you, bro. Be
right,
good.
Man.
Be good. Okay.
All right. Peace.
All right, peace.
Look, I appreciate you guys engaging, because this was very much a conversation I wanted to have, more so than a lecture. It's something I wanted to get back from you all on, because these are things I'm reflecting on, and I'm curious to what extent other men are experiencing them. And so I really do appreciate this audience that I have here and the willingness y'all have to engage. I definitely want to hear more. If you guys have to contribute to the comment section, please do. I do read my comments as long as YouTube tells me they're there. The only time I don't is when YouTube doesn't. So to that extent, I want to hear your thoughts about this, because I really think we have to actually have a different conversation, especially not only in terms of gender in a national context, but also within the Black community, in an intra-racial context. We need to have these conversations, because the legacy of how Black masculinity has been presented to the world is highly problematic, and I think we've internalized a lot of that in some very dangerous ways on a variety of levels. Now, there are plenty of people talking about all kinds of levels as far as that, but I'm interested at this moment in actually finding out if Black men can actually extend something on the conversation as far as intimacy, right? Intimacy beyond the surface, and actually be heard. Actually be, and I don't mean heard, but just listened to, beyond just the hearing act of it. You understand what I mean? I want to know if Black men can extend that and actually have women of good faith hear it. And y'all have those conversations beyond the surface, right? So we can actually get to a point where we're not just dealing with men coming in the door and being expected to blow her mind or fail at it, and that's the end of the dynamic. Can it go further? Can there be a mutual exchange in intimacy that is not just about her? I'm just curious. Y'all let me know. But I appreciate y'all coming. Y'all have a good one. Y'all know what it is. I will see you soon as far as the Onyx Report is concerned. And if you have any other subjects of interest, please feel free to shoot them to me, and I will potentially engage them. If you become a Diamond member, you can actually shoot me subjects that I will do a show on. But other than that, y'all have a good night. Peace. I am here to tell you, brothers, we are not criminals by birth, perennial rapists, incapable intellects, man-children, sperm donors, child support wellsprings, success objects, walking phalluses, ATM machines, lottery tickets, unintelligent henchmen, valueless assassins, pro bono mercenaries, unpaid bodyguards, interchangeable stepfathers, child discipline proxies, unpaid repairmen, workhorses, emotional tampons, or any other socially accepted dehumanizing stereotype. We are thinkers, inventors, innovators, leaders, fathers, and men. Embrace your humanity, know your worth, and extend your time, attention, and resources only to those who genuinely respect you. And remember, your worth is not defined by meeting other people's narcissistic and selfish and unrealistic needs. You define your worth. Peace.